Thank you for staying with us. It's all about the etravel card. I wish I had one to show you, but I'm not a government official and I'm not traveling anywhere on the back of government business. But how is this going to impact our work in the country? How is it going to ensure that we can stem the tide of any activities, financially speaking, that we would not have wanted? The Vice President launched it, and we have joining us in the studio Dr. Gideon Boako, who is an economic advisor and spokesperson at the Office of the Vice President, to give us the nitty-gritty, the fine details. Dr. Boako, a very good morning to you.
Hi, Beth. Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Should I say Happy New Year?
Well, for the first time this year, so it's only fitting, though we're in the second month already.
Yeah.
Why this etravel card? Why?
Yeah, you know, this is one of the, I should say, pet projects of the Vice President. You know, the digitization and digitalization drive that we've been pursuing are basically aimed to improve government service deliveries and also make sure that we have proper controls on the public finances and also not have government monies, people's monies go down the drain on the back of expenditures of government officials. And so of all the digitization agenda that we've been pursuing, we also felt that there's a need not just to look at how the public, you know, interact with government through government services, but also how government interacts with the public and how government spends public funds. And so we did this to cure a certain, I should say, problem within our public sector budgeting and financing systems. As it pertains until this e-travel card came, if a government official wants to travel and you are given some accountable impress, I mean, to cater for your accommodation, to cater for your travel expenses, including feeding and other things that are approved,
accommodation and all of
that are approved. But we used to do all of that since independence with cash. So if you're a government official and you're traveling, and the MDA will write to whatever Ministry of Finance, everything, controller approves everything. If you have to be given, let's say, $500, you're traveling outside the country, the $500 is given to you.
Right, in cash.
So you go, and then you spend the money according to plan. Then you come back, and then you go back and retire whatever is left. But you know,
and that is one of the thorny areas, right? Exactly. Because do you normally get that, people coming back to return any leftovers?
I don't know much about what happens at the end in so many settings, but I know for where I work and personally myself, anytime I have traveled and I come back, I have to go and retire my impress. If there are leftovers, I have to give it. If I exceeded and I have proper justification for that, I make a case for that. But we are humans and we know, we hear things in certain quarters. Somebody may travel and the person will have to go and, let's say, lodge at a hotel and finds a place like a friend or whatever, sleeps.
They don't go to the hotel and all of that.
Pockets the money. It's government money. Once you don't use it, you have to bring it back to government. And so we've had these problems with us. And a lot of the time, we see a lot of government money going into individual pockets through this. And that is why you go to so many ministries, departments, and agencies, and foreign travels is like a hot cake for everybody. When it comes, oh, I want to go, and then people even scheme to get it to their favorites. Now, what we have decided to do, and this is basically something we work on from the Vice President's Office, Ministry of Finance and Controller, to make sure that every government official who is mandated to travel outside the country will not be given cash. Rather, the ministry or department or agency will apply to controller, and once controller approves and it is taken through the GIFMIS process, Controller will then load how much you're supposed to be giving for that travel onto a card. Now, once the card is issued to you, just like a bank credit card, or they are doing this, I think, with Fidelity Bank.
Right.
So the bank will issue the card.
So it's one specific bank you're going to be using for now,
So
or that's...
For now, I think it's Fidelity Bank. The bank will issue the card, and if you have to be given 500 cedis as a countable interest, the 500 cedis will be, cedis will be loaded. The equivalent of that will be loaded on the card. Now, once you travel, every single expenditure you make, controller will have a track of that. Anything you buy. So if you go and use the card to purchase anything that you're not allowed to use the card for, controller will see. So if you go and sleep in a hotel and the bill comes, it will reflect on controller systems with the hotel's name attached to it and everything. So there's that level of transparency. So once you come back, you go to the accountant in your office to retire the impress, and then controller will print the bank statement for that particular account and then show you that when you traveled, you were given, let's say, 50 cedis for taxi, I mean, inbound travels.
Right.
You exceeded that. Instead of picking, let's say, a yellow cab, you went to pick
a black cab,
a black cab,
which is
more expensive.
Right.
Why did you do that? If controller or the accounting people realizes that you have to, pay back some monies to government, you'll be made to do so. So
in this instance, one of the bits about transparency is that it will also make it possible for you to see the back end of the person's expenditure.
Exactly.
And if the person has exceeded without justification, this person would have to make payment.
You have to pay back. So
interesting.
We do that so that there are proper checks and balances. Okay, and that transparency in the government budgeting and budgetary allocations is brought to bear. The other thing is also to curb the problem of corruption.
Right.
So many things happen within the ministries, departments, and agencies. And so far as this does not go for only politicians, so far as you work for government, you're a civil servant or public servant, when you're traveling, these things are done. So you and the accounting person at your office cannot collude, to take government monies for your own advantage.
Right.
And I'm saying this because it is possible that somebody is supposed to travel, the person is entitled to, let's say, $500, but ends up getting, say, $1,000 because, and finds a way to remit whoever he has to pay a certain percentage to. This time around, every request that has to be made must be approved by controller. And once controller approves, it is controller that will disburse the funds to you through the card. And once the card is issued to you, controller then has a track of every single expenditure that you make with the card.
A quick question there. That would also mean more work for the controller, right? And I mean, with all these inflows, imagine the number of people that travel. I know sometimes there are freezes on traveling and all of that, but with the pool of people that travel from time to time, maybe COVID has lowered that. Is this not going to put some pressure on the controller and accountant general?
Yes, but it's manageable, and that's why if there's a need for controller to, even recruit more people to save the public purse, then we have to do that, because we cannot, as a country, sit down unconcerned and allow taxpayers' money to be used by a few individuals at the expense of the majority like that. So we need to get this thing done. And in any system that we have such checks and balances, it puts people to check. And once people know that this card I'm holding is more or less like a CCTV camera on my travel expenses, they become careful. Because sometimes people travel and they make certain expenditures, and you ask yourself, does a person have that money? You don't know where it's coming from, but for all you know, if he's given $1,000 and supposed to spend $200 out of it, and he spends $600, he comes back, nobody even questions the person, come and retire the accounts. People may not even do that, but this time around, it's going to be done. Once you come back and you retire, if you're a frequent traveler, controller may decide to leave the card with you, such that the next time you are traveling and your funds are approved, then they will just load it in the system and you hold the card. But it also means that once you come and retire the accounts, you can't use the card to do anything within the country. And even if you travel outside the country, the accounts will not be operational unless it is reactivated for you. If you are not...
Are these going to be individual cards that the individuals will hold? Or is it going to be that as and when you need to travel, then this will be given you? Because there are different dynamics.
There are two sides of it. If you are a frequent traveler, for instance, the president is a frequent traveler. The vice president may be a frequent traveler. Finance minister or foreign affairs minister is a frequent traveler. So for them, once you come back and you retire, the card may be with you. But once you've retired the accounts, the card is made inactive. So you can't even use it. Even though there may be funds on it, you can't use it for anything.
Until the next
time you are traveling, a request has to be made for controller to approve. And once controller approves and loads funds on it, or says how much is on it is enough, then controller will reactivate that. It is at that time that you can use the card to make transactions again. If you're not a frequent traveler like me, when you come back and retire the accounts, controller will take the card back. Because the card is also usable, reusable by other agents. It is not linked to your name.
That is what I wanted you to clarify.
Exactly. So controller may take the card so that tomorrow, if Ben, you are also traveling, there's an approval for you, controller will not have to go and print a new card.
They can give me the same card.
The same card for you to.
But only that. In that instance, it is my name that will be there. It will be an account created
for you. So any transactions that you make, any expenditure that you make, controller will have it reflected on his system by by appending it to you, so they know that this transaction or expenses were made by you. And then once you come and also retire, they take the card. Any other person can use it, just like hotel, room cards. Anybody can use it depending on how they face it into the system.
Another quick one, right before you go on. I hope I believe you've answered that bit. So the vice president and the president, for example, carrying these cards. So it means, yes, we'll have a log of their expenses as they travel based on what has been allotted to them. Some people would say a national security issue. Other people are fully aware of what their expenses are, what they are doing. Is that a concern?
No. If you are a public officer, you're a public officer. The president and the vice president are not mandated to use public funds to do things that are in secrecy. You understand? So that level of transparency must start from the top. And
I'm only asking this because in other instances, like presidential travels and stuff, you know what people have said, and some of the justifications we've got on the floor of Parliament. Oh, this is a national security issue and all of that. So I'm just wondering whether some of these expenses as well don't fall into that.
Basically, if you travel, I mean, I've been traveling with the vice president outside the country. I don't see anything that he does so extraordinary, because you go and I can tell you a lot of the time he may not even have to hold the card, because a lot of the time, I mean, and as far as I know, anytime we travel, expenses by the vice president are done by the protocol officer who goes with us, because he pays for his hotel room. He pays for his lunch or dinner, breakfast, always given, complimentary. And the vice president cannot go, or the president cannot go and use public funds to go and buy a shirt. you understand?
Right.
If you want to buy a shirt, or you want to buy something that is personal for yourself, you have to use your own funds. You see, it's basically the accommodation, your feeding. And if you have to be given what they call per diem or something ahead, all those ones are checked, approved, you sign in the manual system or in the car system that we hold. If we travel and I'm entitled to per diem, the protocol director who travels with us, he comes with some form of a payment voucher. You sign before he gives it to you. So you don't have that liberty to use the funds to do anything that you want. So I don't think there's anything, shrouded in secrecy that the president or vice president will have to do, for which reason their cars must be treated as a national security matter. There's nothing like that at all. And like I said, anytime we travel, if the vice president has to pay for hotel or food or anything, the payment is done by the protocol officer. So I don't see him holding government cash or anything. There's a protocol directors who will do all those things on their behalf. So that level of transparency is key for us as a country going forward, because a lot of the time, we have government funds going to individual pockets just like that. And there's no means to track them. There's no means to account for them. So this is one of the key, reasons why we are aggressively pursuing digitalization. A lot of the time, people do not realize the immediate impact of all that we are doing. You saw last week or so when Vice President visited the National Service Scheme, how the deployment of a digital technology has helped them save about 112 million cedis that could have otherwise gone to people who are not entitled to receive payment. And it's happening across board. So if we're able to do this across all sectors, we'll be able to save a lot of money. I have said, and I still maintain, that if as a country, we are able to put the proper systems in place, you don't need a good president, or let's say a president so righteous, quote and unquote, to get the country moving. Because if the systems are working so efficiently and effectively, even if you have somebody who is so much having bad intentions, the system will smoke the person out. So we need these systems in place to get things moving. The other thing that this also does for us is the control and the lessening pressure on our foreign exchange, currency. Because as it stands, if government officials are traveling and they are entitled to anything, we have to go and change our cedis to buy dollar at expensive rate. You understand? This time around, you don't need to do that. Government loads cedis on your accounts. So in the bank accounts, it's government accounts, it's cedis. If you travel to US and you have to purchase anything in dollars, the exchange rate thing is done. Government does not have to go and buy dollars for the dollar to feel I'm important. There's so much demand coming for me, so my price must shoot up intrinsically, automatically. So this also has, in some way, has some control on the manner in which our local currency fares with other international trading currencies. So it's all in all a good thing for Ghana, and I think we need to applaud Finance Ministry, Controller, and of course, the gentleman in the Vice President's office, supported by the Vice President himself and his vision, pushing this agenda to make sure that we use the digital tools and the know-how that we have to save and protect the public purse.
Let me just ask you this. So then we're going to be able to really follow what expenses government officials are making out there when they travel. But maybe thinking in light of the right to information law, is this information going to be accessible? Let's say, Dr. Gideon Boaku, you travel, and yes, the controller will know what the details are of your expenses, but I am sitting here, and maybe I've got wind of certain information, and I want to get those details. Are those details going to be available to someone like me, or the ordinary Ghanaian on the street who is curious about how much you spent on your last trip?
To the extent that the right to information law, should I say bill or law, to the extent that the right to information law allows you to get that information, you can have access to it. Why not? Because I don't think this is exempt from any other information that the public may want to get. And I don't see anything so extraordinary about expenditure, travel expenditure by government officials. I mean, once you're a government official, you're a government official. Once you're a public official, you're a public official. Anything that you use the public funds for, people must have visibility into that. There should be that level of transparency. And that's the reason why we're doing this. You understand? So I think it is important, not just government appointees, even the civil servant, chief director, whoever travels.
The technocrats.
He comes back. And Ben wants to write to the ministry requesting for the travel expenditure of this particular person when he traveled to Dubai or he traveled to South Africa to, undertake some government business. That information must be available to the public because it is our money. It is our funds. You understand? You see, if we don't let information to flow and we create a system of such a heightened information asymmetry, then it leaves room for people to speculate and think about things and begin to do things that you may not like even as a government. So as a government, one way of satisfying the people is not just about building roads or schools or anything. That cure of information asymmetry and making sure that information flow, people have access to information, you know, it soothes people's hearts. Once I see that there's that level of transparency and I can have the confidence and assurance that the tax I pay to government will be put to judicious use and will not be used by a few people at the expense of the majority. If I'm asked to pay tax, then I will pay. That's what we have to do.
By what is the stretch of the pool of people that this is going to cover? I am thinking, for example, as you spoke, the Right Honourable Bagman, Speaker of Parliament, is out of the country seeking, you know, assistance when it comes to his health. Some people have complained about his going out, but that is a different issue. Is that to say, for example, that there could be a time in the future when, if the Speaker had to travel, he would be bearing this card? I mean, does he fall into that category?
Why not? He has to.
Right. Okay. Because if the President and Vice are going to have
the
Vice
President has been issued his card.
Right.
I don't know when the Vice President is going to travel, but I'm sure the next time the Vice President is going to travel, this card will have to be activated for him to use it. And likewise, any other person, from the President to the cleaner at the ministry or department or agency.
So it means if this had been done prior to the Speaker's latest travel, he would have been bearing this card and we can know what exactly his expense or his expenses.
I think that was going to be done.
Right.
You see, and we shouldn't take this for granted. There's so much commitment from the President and the Vice President's side to get this thing executed. And that is why the Vice President decided to get the first card, just by showing us example that, look, we mean this, we are committed to it, and we have to do it. Because we can even talk about things hypothetically. We don't know how much, you know, government spends on travels on public officials. It can be a huge amount of money. And we don't have to let this thing become another channel through which people pocket, you know, public funds.
Right.
And like I said, we hear about news from different ministries, department agencies. People travel, come back, and don't even retire their accounts. This time around, with this, you know, digital technology and the e-card that we have launched, we're going to make it quite uncomfortable for anyone who has the intent to use public funds for to his private advantage at the expense of the public through this means. This is something that the Vice President is so much particular about.
So it's going to
the President is so much keen about it, and we're going to make sure that we get this thing done to save the public purse. The little money that we have as a country. You know, somebody told me, one of my former lecturers told me that the problem with Africa is that we are poor as a continent, but individually people are rich. The same thing applies to Ghana. We are poor as a country, but individuals are richer.
So this is to cure that. Let me just ask though, curious thought. We have card this, card that, this, that everywhere. I was just wondering, our Ghana card, it even is supposed to have an e-passport component and all of that. In regenerating, like this is an entirely new creation, e-travel card. Did we contemplate maybe fusing this into the Ghana card so that when I bear my Ghana card, after all, both government officials and non-government officials are going to have to get the Ghana card for those who don't have it yet. So did we contemplate, how about we just feed this into the Ghana card for individuals? Do you get it? Those who are currently working with government, it's fed into your Ghana card. When you are not traveling or when you're no longer with government as a worker, it's taken out. I mean, wouldn't that have been a simpler way to do this?
I'm not too sure we want to get there now. There are two different things. The Ghana card serves the purpose of identification, traceability, and all of that. This one is more of a transactional nature. This is like a credit card, a bank credit card. It does not in any way authenticate your identity or your traceability. And so
but it does. Your identity, in fact, that is what feeds into your traceability. It does,
but in a manner that will be universally acceptable. And that is why if you go to a bank to execute any transaction, and you produce your ATM card or or your credit card, that is not admitted there, you understand? So the Ghana card has its own unique features, and like you said, it's going to be our e-passport, and that's also something the Vice President said at the Ashesi lecture, and people didn't seem to get it. People thought it's not possible, but I can assure you, within this week, you hear news about Ghana card being accepted as e-passport by ACAO. And that one will come, we'll talk about that. And so if along the line we see reason why the transactional component of a national identity card has to be brought to bear, I think if it makes sense, we have to do that. But as it stands now, this card we're talking about is going to be a card that will be issued by a bank, as you know, a credit card or debit card will serve the same purpose. And so as it stands, it's not integrated into the Ghana card, as though when you have the Ghana card, you can also use it to purchase things and other things. I'm not too sure how that integration will play out, but I'm sure if there's prudence in that, there's cost efficiency in that, and it's manageable, it can be done along the line. I'm not too sure of a country that has a card that can also be used at the same time, you know, national identity card that can be used at the same time for transaction purposes. I'm not too aware of that. Yeah.
Moving forward, maybe if there's prudence in that, and if we can save on it, maybe that's an approach we might.
Insofar as there's prudence, it's cost efficient, it's user friendly, and would not create problems for the country. If it comes, it's something we can embrace.
What would you say is have we estimated the savings, for example, that we can get out of this new process? Have we put a figure to it, or do we have an idea that maybe from what we see on the back end, a lot of people, let's say 30% of those traveling, are actually not retiring their cards. We may be losing X sum of money, and with these new cards, though yes, we're going to be printing new cards with certain features, but this is what we hope to get at the end of the day in terms of savings as a country. Do we know?
Not for now. I know between Controller and Finance Ministry, they are working on some metrics, but I'm not too sure whether they have information as to how much savings the country will be making. But of course, and I'm sure once they start and then deploy the cards to a few individuals, they travel and come back, and they juxtapose that against their previous travels, they'll be able to come up with some savings, you know, amount, and definitely this is going to save us some money. But I cannot say with certainty, as I sit here, how much savings the country is going to make from this. Yeah.
Another curious thought: is there any entity? I mean, when it comes to the e-levy, and I'm talking about because there's this, that. At least we've seen the example of some other countries, and we have decided to go in a certain direction. When it comes to this e-travel card, are there any countries whose example we're following, maybe looking at their system and saying, well, we can learn from them? It said that you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. There are always examples. Are there any that we are following? Because I'm looking at even the advanced countries, and some of them, yes, they have card systems, but there are other instances where cash is also given. So I'm just trying to reconcile what we're learning from here.
I mean, you go to so many countries and they're trying to go cashless, and in so many dimensions. And for those countries, hardly would you see a government official traveling and being given cash. So they have the system running already. We are laggards, but of course, we just have to quicken our steps to catch up. So we're not doing this in isolation. There are best examples for us to follow. And we've also learned from how much they are saving. And that is what is also pushing us to make sure we follow, but not just copycat, but follow and design the system to suit our own, you know, dynamics. And that is exactly what we are doing. And I think the idea and the quest to go cashless is something that all nations have embraced, just that others go at it at a very slow pace. We are trying, I mean, within the last decade to move faster, but we've seen an increasing appetite for this from 2017 also coming, of course. I mean, the Vice President putting himself in the middle as a digital champion, as people will say, and getting all government actors to follow suit. Right. And it's something that we need to redouble our steps to get through, because that's the way the world is going. And if you want to deal with some of the petty problems that are confronting nations, making things quite difficult and bringing a lot of inefficiencies and deadweight losses to nations, digitization and digitalization is the way to
They are the way to go.
And we are
my final bit to you, we need some clarity here. So when it comes to when exactly you're rolling out this program, where we're going to know that government officials are going to be operating with the e-travel card, when should we look at? Is it already in the offing?
Yeah, so the first card was issued to Vice President last week. Controller is in the process of making sure that these cards are rolled out as soon as possible. It's not something that we want to put on the table to a later date. And so I'm pretty much sure that from this month or next month, any government official who is mandated to travel and has approval from the ministry or department or agency, and controller approves of how much, that person will be issued a card.
So you're saying as soon as possible. So we don't know whether if a government official were to be traveling today, they would be affected. We don't know that. I mean,
I'm not so sure of today, but I can say at least within February or from 1st of March, we should be able to get it going.
So latest by the 1st of March, we should expect that any government officials' travels would, involve the e-travel card.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And it should not just be limited to government finances and government officials. I think multimedia or any other agency can implement that. It helps saves a lot of money, and I'm sure if multimedia should adopt this is also going to help. It's not something that, and I know there are companies in Ghana that already have that system in place. When officials from that company are traveling, they issue them cards.
Right.
They don't give them cash.
Right.
And I know even within our market circles, our market women and people who travel to China, Dubai to apply trade and commerce, some of them, before they travel, instead of going to change cedis into dollars, they go and get some of these temporary cards. I got one about 2 months ago when I wanted someone to buy something for me from Holland. I went and got the person the card. I didn't want to give the person cash, because if the person goes and comes to tell me I bought this at $5, I don't have trace of it. So I went, Fidelity Bank gave me a temporary card. I loaded money onto the card and gave to the person. Every transaction the person made, I got an alert on my phone through text messages when they came.
So basically,
exactly. So
it's the way to go.
It's the way to go, and it helps. Yeah.
Doc, thank you so much for joining the conversation, and we'll be watching to see how this works and how efficient it's going to be moving forward.
And I'm sure we will have the opportunity to come back one day to talk about how much savings we're making as a country.
I look forward to that.
Yes,
I look forward to that. Well, this is how we wrap the conversation this morning on the AM show, the e-travel card. Thank you for your company. At 10 and at noon, we'll bring you our news bulletins, but a very happy birthday to Emefa Atiamwa Eli, my colleague here at the Multimedia Group. Happy birthday to you. To all of you out there, do have a lovely day and stay as we bring you the rest of our programs.